Okay. Waiting for it. There we go. All right, we are live. Hello. Hello, 50. Hello, Michael, Andy. Feels like ages till we get to watch this pain again. I'm still fuming. Yes, I understand. Why does every week have to be a big week? Biggest club in the world. The most chaos evening. Ali, Daniel, Suckhurst in the building. Let's go. It's Sin. Yes, thank you. You came and chatted. That was a good time. Uganda. Ten Hag out. Ten Hag needs more time and 11 more IX players. Okay. Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon. Yes, Mike. It is 6 o'clock over there, isn't it? FIFA content time. So few players in the squad playing well. Coaching issue. Interesting. I might differ from you a little bit on that opinion, but not in the conclusion. Edson Alvarez, the missing piece. Good point. Morning, eh? The Bruno news. What's the Bruno news? Give us the good news, James. Ten Hag needs the Ajax Stadium, too, to succeed. Ooh. 3 games? Mesh. Salford? Yeah, good. Bruno appeal successful. Did we appeal it? I have no idea. I honestly didn't even, ask. I haven't thought about that. We appealed it. So we won't get to see... I see it just came out. So we won't get to see any games without Bruno. Okay. Fair enough. It's funny the reaction you'll get to that too, because it's like I kind of wanted, not saying I kind of wanted to see us get a few games without Bruno to see how it goes. It's funny that we won it because I've seen different appeals that I thought were better that didn't get, like Casemiro's. How did we not appeal and get that one? You know, that thing against Palace, not the tackle, but the one where he grabs the shirt. Like how the fuck did that one not get appealed? That was one of the dumbest red cards. Considering, Fred's getting punched in the face moments earlier, how is that one not appealed? You know what I mean? How is Cavani still get his ban, for that? And Enzo, Fernandez is walking around with his, racist ass chanting, as captain of Chelsea without any punishment. How the hell is that happening? What is that? What is that? That it's hilarious. It does seem totally random. It does seem totally random, on that basis. But fair. Like I said, I could see why he got sent off. I don't think it was a red either. But I do think that I could see why in the moment the referee went with the red. Yeah, I could see why. I think he gave him a reason to, unfortunately. But, that's where VAR probably should be making the change. But they didn't. That being said, we probably were better off for it. I think we were better after the red card than we were before it. I think we were better in that game with 10 men. But at the same time, I certainly also think Tottenham were sleepwalking after they went up 2-0. Any truth in Shaw getting injured again? Yes, we will talk about it. Shaw never coming back ever again, is he? Not exactly. That rumor that was posted is... That thing you're seeing going around today, I think, is not really correct. But not in that way. But yeah, he's going to be out longer. That much is true. But we will talk about it. Shaw pregnant? No, I don't think so. Not in the traditional sense. Hey, okay. 3 highest earners, Casemiro, Bruno, and Rashford, are a disgrace to the club. Oh, yikes. Okay. Ref couldn't wait to send Bruno off. I do hear that Inzaghi could be on the cards. I should have made a little thing to format this discussion so that I don't lose my entire train of thought on all of this, on what I wanted to discuss today. Maybe I should. Maybe I should do that real quick while we're getting set up, just so I don't lose my whole train of thought here. That's okay. Let's start. Lose the cat, please. No, my hair's just messy today. See, my hair's just messy today. I can't get it to go properly today. So the hat is keeping my hair organized. The hat is keeping my hair organized. It's that simple. Anyway, Emo James. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. How do you come up with Muppet? Well, that's the thing. It's supposed to be self-deprecating, Ridwan. That was kind of the point. It was supposed to be a bit self-deprecating. But that was kind of the idea of it. So anyway, it's getting hot now. It's cold today. Can I increase my mic volume? Hold on. Yes, I can. How about now? Is it better now? Is the microphone better now? If you turned it all the way up, turn it a little down, because now it'll probably burst your ears. For some reason, like I said, I've said this before, but my microphone tends to like lower its volume all the time, just on its own, and I have no idea why. And half the time I remember to come into the streams beforehand and go to my settings and update it, and then half the time it doesn't. Anyway, I don't know what the reason is, but then when we get in here, thank you for reminding me of that, because I actually don't remember. It happens to most. I don't get it. I don't know what the reason is. I don't play with the input volume ever, but I'll go in and it'll be at 65 to 75. So anyway, never thought I would listen to the Muppeteers while I'm cooking. Incredible. I'm not Riddy Muppeteers. No, Riddy has been on here before. How do you do, fellow kids? Mean vibe with the cap? I'm not that old, Jack. I'm not that old. This is my default way of dressing. We're almost into fall season, so it's gonna be, you know, stylish. I'm still young. I'm still a young man. Don't insult my culture. All right. Anyway, thank you all, and please like the stream and all that, and then let's get into it. Am I wearing a hat because I'm bald? I'm definitely not bald. I have an enormous amount of hair. I have an enormous amount of hair, actually, everywhere. I cannot get rid of it. Too much hair. 55 isn't young. Tons of gray. There's no gray in my hair. Actually, there is a little bit of gray, but I've had some gray hair since I was like 20. Cobby will not be out long. Cobby will be fine. Cobby is fine. Please calm. I know. Cobby is fine. Cobby is okay. It's just the cap. He will be okay, Dennis. Dennis, it's okay. Dennis, I got you. It's okay. Anyway, all right, what do we want to talk about? Let's Tubbs. Hearing the diver got his red card overturned. Sigh. Yeah. Casemiro Ugarte pivot. Yeah, true. We might see that. But we should still, Mount just got his head busted wide open, right? He's got a bunch of stitches. He should be fine. And then Eriksson didn't start, so we could still see somebody else play, especially in Europa. Yeah, I didn't know you could win an appeal either. It's crazy. Okay. Mount's fine. I mean, he's fine enough that he will play. So, all right, what are we saying here? Good. Let's get to it. First, let's talk about Luke Shaw real quickly, so that I can get this out of the way, and we can discuss a few things about Luke Shaw. I've been telling you for a few weeks now that, unfortunately, Yeah, we could talk about Braithwaite. Unfortunately, Luke Shaw, the alarm bells were going off on his injury. He's not expected to be back for another 4 to 6 weeks, so it's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. So in terms of the schedule overall, if you look at the schedule, we've got an international break after this weekend, right? Hold on one second. We've got an international break after this weekend. And then we've got games, and then we have another international break after November 10th. So that's about 6 weeks from now. I don't expect Luke Shaw will be back before then. After then, it would be he could make the bench before then at the current timescales, but he will. It'll be tough. It's more likely afterwards. Then we will also see Lenny Yoro after that too. Lenny Yoro will be back probably at just outside of 12 weeks from when the original injury occurred, all said and done. So not that far off the original time scale, given that he had to have surgery, given that they delayed the surgery. Well, not like delayed, but delayed it a week or two so that he could stay on the tour and all of that. So yeah, it's all within the original kind of time scale as well. Just a little bit longer, but that's okay. They're being careful with all of them. But then Lenny Yoro should be back too. And so I think that would be fantastic. So we'd have a pretty full team after that break for sure. We'd have a pretty full team after that break. Then there's another break, believe it or not, right? When's the next break after that? I guess there really isn't one. Then it runs strong through December, through the Christmas period, and then we get a break in the middle of January. But regardless, the alarm bells are going off on Luke Shaw anyway. We've been worried about his injuries. We've been worried about his situation. And then, we need a left back, and United are well aware of it. Tub Saber. I thought it was an asteroid, but it was just Bruno's shot. Yeah. And so, yeah, there's concerns about him. And as I've said before, they're looking into left backs in January. Now, one of the names that obviously they've been looking into is Anthony Robinson, one of the names on our list. Yes, and they are considering the January window for a left back, that it might be a necessity. You can see, I'm going to talk about something really off the wall, different than usual in a minute, and I'll tie it back into this. But I'm concerned that Diogo Dalot is running with an injury. I'm concerned about it. I'm just going to say that I'm concerned about that. That Diogo Dalot is running with an injury that we're not going to pick up on, and he might just play through it. But I think that it's pretty obvious in some respects that Diogo Dalot is running through an injury. So Anthony Robinson, this was last season's stats. We've looked at it before. He's a player who is very good at a lot of things. Very good at a lot of things. And defensively, he is also excellent. And they'd be interested in him. They'd be interested in him. When you look at, I was looking at Fulham here, and Fulham have right now the third best defense in England in terms of their expected goals against, which is quite impressive. Anthony Robinson at the same time has 2 assists on the season as well. This is among all defenders, this ranking. And among fullbacks, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. I think he's about 6th or 7th among all fullbacks in terms of chance creation, has 2 assists on the season, and Fulham are a strong defensive team. That's kind of backing up the expectation of Anthony Robinson as one of the better all-round players, all-around fullbacks. And I think that he would be a really good player for us. And obviously, yes, there's other ones. Yeah, Marco Silva is a good coach, and Fulham are a decent team. They were growing into it last year. They've sort of really come on this season overall. I mean, God, look, they have more expected goals than we do, and they have the third best defense in the league in terms of overall. They're like 7th and then 3rd in defense. I mean, they're about borderline top 4 in terms of their overall productivity, right? They're 6th in points, but borderline top 4 on the numbers. So yeah, they are a good team. They're a good team. He's a good player and someone that they could definitely look to in January. Not the only option, as we've talked about, Aït-Nouri, Kirkes, and then, Miguel Gutierrez. There's other names, but, it's something that is becoming rather problematic, obviously, just that it's been so many injuries all over the place. So many times for Luke Shaw, and he's just completely unreliable. So, yeah, that's a concern. That is a concern. There's other names. There's other names for sure. There's other names, but I think this will be a priority. And in early December or at the November international break, I think they will be kind of formalizing and deciding on their plans. Now, obviously, one of the things we'd hoped to have was someone like Gerard Braithwaite as a potential backup left-sided center back. Would help a lot. In the kind of tactical breakdown that I did, one of the things I pointed out just to speak, this was a lot of fun on the watch along doing this, and I posted a video showing it all. But one of the things we spoke about a lot and where we see Lissandro struggling mightily is that we've turned our center backs into channel defenders with the way that we're playing. We've turned our center backs into channel defenders. And Lissandro's having a terrible time of it this season. And you saw like the criticism from Jamie Carragher and such of Matthijs de Ligt as well. And really the fact is neither of them are particularly good space and channel defenders. And that was one of my concerns about de Ligt in the first place. I think he's been good this year, but not in that way. They're both aggressive on the front foot players, and we don't really have a good channel defender. And it would lessen the need for this left back thing in a sense if we had more athletic left-sided center back. But we don't have that. And now there's talk of Gerard Braithwaite of Liverpool going for him. And that is one I would definitely keep an eye on. Dominic Tenenbaum, join PBL and stay away from Cavus. Yeah, so PBL is Patreon Business Lounge. It's the channels and Discord you get when you join Patreon. So it's a good joke for people in there. Thank you for the donation. Yes, Gerard Braithwaite's whole family are Liverpool fans. I've mentioned that before, and he could very much be, he could very much be the guy that they go for. He totally could. If they needed the money and they want to go for it in January, we'll see. I mean, Liverpool didn't spend much, right? So they probably have the money, and you see how Slot is performing this year. Why not back them? Why are they not looking at backing themselves up? I mean, let's just look at something really quick. Going back to this again, Liverpool are second to Tottenham only because we gave them so much XG in a single game, and they are first defensively. They're looking at a title charge with Rodri out. If I'm Liverpool right now, I'm giving Arne Slot 200 million in January because they could easily win the title. It's up for grabs. It's available. The title is theirs if they can perform and if they can build on what they have. So, I think that Liverpool's thinking is they're going to be strongly in the title chase or in the front of the league by January, and they're going to go spend and chase it. And yeah, I could see it being Braithwaite because they don't have as much depth there as they would like, and yeah, I mean, I could see it. They've been really good. They've been really strong, and they could back them. They could back themselves to win the title this year for sure, especially with the situation with City and Rodri. Yeah. Morgan, would United look at Unai Emery as their next coach? I'm gonna get to the manager stuff in just a second here, right? Yeah, I'm gonna get to the manager stuff in just a second here because there's a lot of rumors that are not true. And there's certain things that are true, and it's obviously a very complex situation that we are in. So yeah, let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to get to before I talk about the manager stuff. The other thing I wanted to mention, you know, obviously you see like there's a couple of stories that came out in the last day or two. Last day, I think there's you know, stuff from Andy Mitten talking about, you know, the FA Cup final, about players not being convinced tactically on everything that's going on. You know, that's a concern. And then there were some stories yesterday about some players thinking that Ten Hag is going to get sacked. And then there's stories today about how the senior squad is backing him. Now, it should be really clear, not a single one of these stories, just to be clear, not a single one of these stories said that the players have given up on Ten Hag. Not a single one of those stories said that they've backed off of Ten Hag, or that they're throwing him under the bus, or that they're doing anything like that. It said they expected him to be sacked, totally factual, that most people expected him to be sacked this summer, that and that right now that they're concerned about his sackings as well. Darkest Earth, something that hasn't been picked up on is Dalot's basically next to Ugarte on all goal kicks. I'm going to come back to that because I did pick up on it, and I did actually put it in the in my video. Dominic, really loving your live streams. Any plans for collabs? Could you do some videos on behind the scenes at United now versus before? Yeah, I have a couple of plans for different videos that I do want to address, and I also likely will want to do some videos with some of the other good content creators out there and things. And I just got to reach out to them again to schedule something and set it up now that we're into the season, because it's an open invitation, and sometimes I just need to do more about getting involved in that. We'll be doing a video. I will be doing another podcast with the guy I did a podcast with a bit ago. Theater of the Red is his name. Sean Connolly, anyway. And then I'll be doing one with Darnish tomorrow, too, at the minimum. And then we'll have lots through this week. Anyways, so, you know, what I was saying there is that, God, what was I saying? Got distracted. Right, about the players and leaks and things like that. The thing is that, you know, the players that would be talking to Andy Mitten, it's not Marcus Rashford, because that's where everybody wants to pin it on, is not the one talking to Andy Mitten. Andy Mitten famously complains that Marcus Rashford doesn't talk to media. I'm not trying to be rude to him. I'm saying Andy Mitten has said that before in the past. You know, and so it's not Marcus Rashford complaining about that. We know, you know, that Casemiro has had complaints about certain things. We know, you know, a lot of that as well has happened in the past. You know, when it comes to players thinking that someone's going to get sacked, I mean, that's just life. But that doesn't mean that they're trying to get him sacked. The person who said that or that observed that or anything, it doesn't mean that's what they're trying to do. And I think that at the moment, it's the wrong time to start trying to just like pin it on people. Now, I think that I want to talk through a couple of points. I'll go through the news first so I don't bore you all too much with my opinions and thoughts and things like that. You know, I'll go through the news first, but I want to bring up some really interesting points because, you know, I saw, you know, we had a podcast. I did the podcast with Phil yesterday, right? And I know a lot of people were really bothered by a lot of the comments that he made about effort and things like that too. And I get it. Because I disagree with a lot of it as well in some respects. But I think there's some salient points there kind of underlying it once again that I think matter, but we'll get to that. So let's talk about the news. Let's talk about the news first of all. Let me give you the real kind of shit. You know, about what's been happening. And some of it you're going to like, and some of it you're not going to like, okay? Just figuring out how to start this properly. So the situation as we know it was, obviously, they went through their whole review over the summer. We've been through all that. They talked to other managers. And they offered Thomas Tuchel the job. He didn't want it at that period of time following that, and they didn't expect that, to be fair. They actually thought right then and there were some stories about the thing was about to conclude just because they were meeting. They were ready to offer him the job, and they thought that it was going to be accepted and that Thomas Tuchel was going to become the manager. But he turned it down. There's reasons he didn't want it. I've mentioned it before, some of the reasons about the scope of the job. There's differences in how he assesses. There's a story from Build as well talking about it. Differences in how he assesses the team, differences in how he assesses the players, differences in how he assesses all of that. And so that was an issue. So of course they turned to Ten Hag and they said, all right, we want to make a go of it. Now, Omar Barada talked about us winning the title in 4 years. I've mentioned previously that in an ideal world, what they wanted is to get their manager for the next 3 to 4 years to build up to winning that title. Now, when this all kind of happened, they went to Ten Hag. They were not able to come to terms on a contract. I've said all this before, rehashing here in a minute, and he got his contract extended by a year. Following that, they made a whole host of changes to staffing, to coaches, to assistants, to all sorts of things that that we know, and brought people in. Now, the plan was to give Ten Hag the season. The plan very much was to give Ten Hag the season. And it would essentially put us back in, unfortunately, the situation we were in at the end of last year, where through the season and by the end of the season, they would be able to decide whether he's the person who should stick around and lead the team for the long term into the full phase of building up to this title charge. And that this season was obviously a season where everybody was going to get their feet under the desk, get situated, figure things out, all of that. I think that this was incredibly naive by INEOS, bearing in mind a lot of that decision was made before Dan Ashworth was in the building, right? Before Dan Ashworth was in the building and after they'd gone through this entire process of looking to replace him and undermining him. And yes, they did undermine him in doing that. And that is a problem. I mean, that is a serious issue, right? That is a serious issue that they went through all of that because it's not the first season at the end of the day, it's the third season. And you have a lot of history with Ten Hag and you have a lot of things that have happened with Ten Hag and with players, with staff, with fans, with everybody, with media, where you just have this history that is there and that has occurred. And there's a lot of things that were wrong in the beginning, and I actually want to talk about those interestingly and compare them to a lot of things that Sir Alex Ferguson said, because people like to make that comparison, and I think it was an interesting one. And I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole last night of looking through old Sir Alex little like clips and videos and articles and things like that, because I was just really curious, what was his view, okay? The reason they didn't feel it was particularly risky in this respect is that this is a transition season. You've heard Ten Hag say it, and he's saying it in his way, which is that they viewed this as a season where they will build on things and really be able to assess the overall thing, get the stadium plan sorted, get the financials sorted, clearing out more players. By next season, they'd have virtually an entirely fresh team of younger players. They've been able to get rid of 90% of the players they wanted to get rid of in their overall assessment of building the team. And you could really start to go for it. And so it was a season of assessment, a season of all of that. But at the same time, they also have for this season certain targets, certain measures that they wanted to see, namely, in a few different areas, right? They wanted to see progress on the style of play and on the implementation of a game model. And look, I think it's pointless to compare the last 10 years. I just do, because you actually have new owners now. It's pointless to compare it for so many different reasons, because we have new owners. Humans are really, really good at finding patterns where there aren't ones. And so people use that in a sense of like, this is a transition year. It is. there's a lot of seasons that weren't, and it was just bullshit to call it a transition year. It can, it could be wrong before and right now, and it still could be frustrating. And these are the patterns that unfortunately that things fall into. Is we're really, really good at finding those kind of patterns where they aren't there, and then putting them all together. It's the same thing when people say, "Hey, we've sacked managers before and it hasn't improved things." Okay. That doesn't mean you don't sack a manager. The same reason you could say that we've signed players and it hasn't improved things. So do you stop signing players? Same reason I said we've sold and got rid of the problems and it doesn't fix things. So what, right? There's a lot of different, there's big differences in really all of this. So that is the reality of it. I'm not making excuses for it because, like I said, I think it was naive and it was a mistake. I think it was doomed. Because he was essentially undermined already, because he was essentially a dead man walking already, and because he only ended up with a 1 season left, and because of the history of the last few years and, in the dressing room and the players and the spending and all of that, it was naive. And I think that if Dan Ashworth had been in earlier, it would not have gone this way at all. They would have already made that decision and stuck by it well before the FA Cup final. It wouldn't have changed things one way or another, and you would have progressed with a simple plan. So I think it was naive and it was a mistake from people who are not, experts in this area, right? Because that's what they were not at this point in time. And when it came down to Sir Jim Ratcliffe meeting with managers to try to offer them the job, you're already too far gone because that's not how we're supposed to run things. And it was done out of necessity, but it's not how we're supposed to do things. That shouldn't be happening. I'm not saying Jim Ratcliffe should never meet a manager prospect, but it's like it wasn't correct. It wasn't right in the way that things went forward. Now, I don't know that they had another option, but either way, it wasn't ideal. Now, that situation is because of the last 10 years and getting in late into the midseason and all of that, right? So, it's making the best of a bad situation. So they made that plan, they went forward with it, and then they said, okay, fine. So if this is a transition year, if this is a year of assessing everything, then what could we do to give us the best chance of success? So what did they do? They got rid of all the assistant coaches, and there were problems with many of them, although I think it was a mistake maybe to get rid of Benny McCarthy. He was somebody that a lot of people got along with in the dressing room, that I do think was somebody that actually was working really hard to bridge the gaps, just from the things that I've heard. But they brought in a lot of other people. One of those being Van Nistelrooy. And, as I said in the past, they can say as many times as they want that it's just purely just Ten Hag's decision, but there's other aspects to it. I guarantee you that for a fact. Now, there might have been qualifications around who they said. They said, okay, yeah, you go pick somebody, but here's the thing. We want somebody who has a lot of experience, and we want somebody who knows Manchester United. So maybe they gave him a list of people to choose from, and he chose. I'm just saying it's not as cut and dry as it would just be, Ten Hag didn't just pull Ruud's name, out of thin air. There was discussion in all of this. Athletic just reported that Benny says Ten Hag lacks a bit of that fire, that passion. Fair enough. And we will get to some of that too. And so they made that decision. Then what? They started making those changes. They club-led recruitment. Yeah, they brought in younger players, not particularly, by the way. I'll give you some stats here on this because I thought this was a little bit of bullshit to me in hearing it. Okay, and thank you to Ataman who gave me these numbers. Of course, Eric called him directly. He called him to be his assistant. That's not what I'm saying. Anyway, here's what he says. It says in the match day squad that faced FC 24 out of 22 were below the age of 22. Kobbie Mainoo, Toby Collier, Alejandro Garnacho, and Rasmus Højlund. Everyone else was 22 years of age or above. purchases or people that we've signed by age: 35, 33, 30, 30, 30, 29, 28, 27, 27, 26, 26, 25, 25, 24, 24, 23, 23, 22, 22, 20, and 18. Rasmus Højlund and Lenny Yoro being the youngest of them, right? 15 of the 21 players signed by Ten Hag at United have been 24 years or older. So we haven't really been signing just younger players. I think that our average age of our squad versus Tottenham was 7 months younger. That was it. So it's not like we're playing a particularly young or inexperienced team. Matthijs de Ligt is somebody who's played in Champions Leagues for the last 5 years. Anyway, a lot of experience. Mazraoui, all of that. There's a lot of experience in this team. The back line is incredibly experienced. There's a few young players in there for sure. So there's that. But that is not really the route that we went. So we brought in a lot of players. Lenny Yoro is certainly someone who will take time, but is young, but has extremely high potential. Now, we targeted a lot of good experienced players too, just on the younger side. Todibo we wanted to sign. Tosin we looked at signing. Braithwaite we obviously know we looked at signing. These are experienced players who would have integrated pretty quickly into the team, not players who would have taken years to be ready and all of that. So it's a mixed approach because it wasn't like we were just signing, kids or something like that. Our signing and the money we were spending was on fairly experienced professional athletes. But they did a lot of this. They made changes. They worked with all of this. And one of the things that they did was they also signed players with a certain style of play in mind, bringing in Joshua Zirkzee, the idea being to work out a style of play that was effective. And what they wanted, without telling Ten Hag how to do it, this is very important. They have never told Ten Hag who to pick, who has to play, and I will say this 100 times. It's bullshit. They've never, ever told Ten Hag who to play, and how to set up his team. But they have discussed the way that they see it being successful and the way that they see it working. And a big part of that was to play a high pressing, attacking team. They like the dynamics of a false nine, of having fast runners and all of that, but playing in a way that is set up to dominate and control teams. And so in looking at the season so far, they wanted to see it and say, let's give him a season to see how this goes. Here are our targets. Here are the things we want to measure, the way we want to play, the team getting on together and the players getting along together and not having these huge issues in the dressing room anymore and people feeling like they can't communicate, that they can't talk and all of that. And we want to see progression in the numbers, and we want to see some results too. You can lose some games, but we don't want to be sitting there doing nothing. We don't want to be sitting there getting nowhere and just playing, again, you could play okay football. You can't play good football and be getting 20th and getting relegated, and you can't be playing bad football and getting 5th or 6th. So it needs to be a combination of all of these things. The original plan was to assess things later on, right? Was to say, all right, well, let's look at it ahead of the January window, see where we are at before the end of the calendar year. Are we still in all these competitions? How are we progressing? How are we getting there? Where are we going? And that was the original plan. And then they would be able to know, all right, do we need to make an urgent change during the year? Or are we going to ride it out into the second half of the season? And is he doing great? And we're considering keeping him for the long term? Or do we kind of already know he's probably not our guy long term, but we're going to see out the rest of the season and start the process of looking early? That was supposed to happen around closer to the end of the calendar year. Things have been so bad. That it's forcing them to discuss it earlier. And yeah, the alarm bells are going off for a lot of people on how things are going, because the results and how things are progressing are so bad on so many fronts right now that obviously it is forcing them to move things a lot sooner. And, so last week on one of these lives, I think it was on Friday or something, I said, look, they want to see how it goes. I said in the international break, they want to see how it goes through the next period of time. And then I said they want to see, let's just mute, okay? They want to see how it goes through the next period, through to the next international break and see if there's progress because they were worried about certain pitfalls. Well, those pitfalls have shown up and gotten worse and worse. And then I said, all right, well, things are starting to go poorly, but there was something against Palace, but then it was bad against 20. Let's see how it goes over these 3 games to the next international break. And it's gone really bad so far with the Tottenham game, a real collapse. It's not the games like Palace that will get him sacked. It's the games like Liverpool and Tottenham, because when you show up against anyone who actually exerts any type of opposition to us, we flounder and fail and fall back into old patterns. So those are the downsides that they see. They expected it to be a lot better by now. And they were, like I said, they were ready for things to not be great. They were ready for us to not be on a tear. But they wanted to see more than this. They understand some of the reasons it's not happening. They understand some of the reasons, and they're not in total disagreement about some of the reasons we're not performing. But they're concerned with basically the whole attitude of things. One, that, that the game model and implementation and all of that we've talked about, that it's non-existent. I don't think we've played one game back-to-back the same. And that's not what they want. That is not their vision for the club. Their vision for the club is not that we play different one game to the next. Their vision for the club is not that we sit off suddenly and apply zero pressure to Tottenham at home. That's not their model. That is not their view of Manchester United as the way forward. So that is something that they were concerned with. That is not how they see things moving forward. They wanted to see consistency. Now we're not seeing it. We signed players to build a model. We barely have gotten Ugarte going into the team, and now we play him and start him in the Premier League. Finally, in the midfield we want, and we don't play anything like what he was signed for. And like I was going to say, I said on the podcast, or I said on one of my video, maybe in the post-match thing, that I might have to give it to people saying Ugarte is going to be a failure, because he is. He's going to fail. If we play like we played against Tottenham, he's going to fail. If he gets deployed by Ten Hag to sit in front of a back four, defend deep and hope we can hit on the break, get him out the team, bench him. There's no point playing him. And there's no point playing anybody in that case. But there's no point playing him. You're supposed to play, and the same thing goes for Matthijs de Ligt. He is going to fail the way we just played. And the same thing goes for Lisandro Martinez. He's going to fail the way we just played. And the same thing goes for Joshua Zirkzee. He's going to fail the way we just played. That was Zirkzee easily the least influential game, because he's not made for playing on a counter just because he can get in and you can get runners behind him. That's what you can do to link up around the box and in attacking areas. But the game model, we should have been pushing up. You want De Ligt, Lisandro, Ugarte winning balls high and pressing on the front line. I don't miss that. I know that's why we play counters, so don't play them. But you don't have to. That's a decision by the manager. You don't have to. You don't have to play that way. But that's just not correct. So there's concerns over that, over not implementing the way forward properly. And then obviously the performances themselves have been poor. Now, one of the things Phil and I were discussing is you talk about the players' application and work ethic. It's not been the best at times. It's been here or there. The question is the cause of those things, right? And to some degree, there's an element of, to some degree, there's definitely an element of it that is on players too, of not working and things like that. That being said, at the same time, you've got all this history of things not working. You've got all this history of things not going right. You've got a history of players being, feeling incredibly demotivated by how things go. And, I'll come back to that, Ridwan, and feeling incredibly demotivated, and it's hard to keep that up. I get the aspect of it. You know what? I'm just going to pull it up. I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to go back to this a little bit later because I think there's some interesting teams, there's some interesting things here. But no, I'm not going to, it's fine. We'll do it later. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I said I went down a whole rabbit hole of Sir Alex Ferguson quotes and things like that, but we'll talk about it later. The point being is that, one of the things though, that I'll just say this quote from Sir Alex, it was talking about relying on the power of observation. And one of the things he says, sometimes I could even tell that a player was injured when he thought he was fine. Now he's talking about how even at Aberdeen, he started to delegate training. Someone told him to delegate training. So that he could observe more and that he could see more. And one of the things that happens to a lot of managers, in my opinion, and that has happened to Ten Hag, is that people can get too far in. People get too far deep in, and they stop seeing, and they only can think. And so they're trying to figure it all out, and they stop actually seeing what's in front of them because they're so deeply enveloped in the issues. And I thought that was an interesting, point, from Sir Alex. And we know that he as a manager stepped back a lot from training, and from the actual groundwork on a daily basis, and did a lot of managing from a different perspective. And we were talking about this, that managing the players, managing people, yeah, exactly that. And that was at Aberdeen. So that was before United, right? But here's the thing. Sir Alex still was a control freak. He was still on top of everything. That's what he says. He says that he delegated training. He says it was the best thing I ever did. It didn't take away my control. My presence and ability to supervise were always there. And what you can pick up by watching is incredibly valuable. Seeing a change in a player's habits or a sudden dip in his enthusiasm allowed me to go further with him. Sometimes I could even tell that a player was injured, though he thought he was fine. And that is incredible. The thought process there is incredible, right? Because the point is, you step back and get a bit more of a bird's eye view of things. Doesn't take you out of being able to control it and deal with it. And the issue is, I think when people struggle, they tend to naturally get themselves in deeper and deeper and deeper, and they stop seeing the forest for the trees. It happens to managers and it happens to players all the time. And they start to think and overthink and overthink and overthink and overthink, and they stop actually observing. And, I think that observation and thinking are two totally separate skills, which I think is what Sir Alex was saying there. The observation and thinking are two totally separate skills. So, that's a lot of what's happened. But they're concerned about a lot of those things. And so as it stands now, just to get through finishing this overall news and situation, which obviously I've been talking about it for 20 minutes straight. It doesn't fit into a tweet. That's why I wanted to explain it on here, and then I'll answer questions because I'm almost done. Those are the concerns that they have. They wanted to wait until longer to make this assessment. They're kind of forced to already be thinking about making a change and thinking about what that would mean and all of that. When you see the point about the next couple of games, the thing is that don't think about it as, yes, I know about Bruno Fernandes's red card, guys. Don't think about it as the next two games define his season, or define whether he's the right guy or not. That's not the point. There's a line of thinking here, and it's a little bit hard to understand, but I kind of get it. Let's say your targets are here, and you're saying, all right, we want to see the manager progressing towards this. Well, every game is just giving you evidence of where you are on that progression. And so it's not that the next two games decide things. It's just if the progression is a lot lower, you need to be meeting this and it's down here. So you're below the line of progression, then every game adds to that discussion and adds context to that for how long you wait, right? Because what's the alternative plan? Well, I'm going to tell you what it is. The basic alternative plan is Ruud van Nistelrooy becomes interim manager for the rest of the season. That's the basic alternative. Is that guaranteed to succeed? No, it's absolutely not guaranteed to succeed, right? It's not guaranteed that it's going to make everything better and that it's going to fix things. Am I saying it shouldn't be a plan? No, I think it's a good plan. I think it's a decent backup plan, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to fix things. You know, bringing back Ole Gunnar Solskjaer isn't going to fix things. I'm sorry to say, it's not. I don't think it'll get us top 4. I think that ship has sailed a long time ago. You know, when it comes to respect to things like that, I think that's very naive of people who think that way. You know, yeah, and it doesn't mean that Van Nistelrooy is not there working to help Ten Hag and to fix things and all of that. Like they said, of course he is. They want to turn things around. Players want to turn things around. Manager want to turn things around. They all want to have a good season. I'm going to anger a lot of the people I talk with regularly, but with the stuff I say about Ollie, but it's just the truth. Sorry to tell you, it's the truth. It's not. So anyway, it's not guaranteed to fix things. So the question is, they could decide early that Ten Hag is not the guy for the future. And that decision might be made already, frankly. They might have enough evidence to figure that out. Personally, I'd already be extremely shocked if Ten Hag is a manager beyond this season. Like, extremely shocked. I would have said that back in July, though, too. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's, you know, instantly changing him is going to fix things this season. In a lot of instances, interim managers end up having virtually no effect on the end result of a season. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do something, but I'm saying that it's not about 1 or 2 games to decide if he's the right guy. It's all within the context of this somewhat mediocre kind of transitional seasons. You know what I mean? Like it's all within the context of that. Now, I spoke to some people to ask as well, what about the performances? You know, because Van Nistelrooy's there. Rene Hake is there. Well, aren't you going to look at them and say that, well, if Ten Hag goes, they've got to go too? And the answer is no. One, because they don't have the same history as Ten Hag, right? They don't have the same history as Ten Hag. And assistants often have different ideals. I mean, when Solskjaer got sacked, you could look at Carrick and McKenna. They had totally different ideas to Ten Hag, to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Carrick, as soon as he became interim, he did something totally different that worked. And McKenna, you can see, plays a totally different style of football to Solskjaer when he became manager. They always have different ideas, and that is just normal. It's not writing off 2 seasons under INEOS. They only got in once the season was already screwed, you know? But here's the point. Here's the question, and this is what I look at. So then what happens, okay? What happens? So if the next games go really poorly, it's going to add color. It's going to add context. It's going to add additional evidence to the conversations that will be held during this international break. It's going to, in the end, though, Jimbo, we didn't qualify for Champions League with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as our interim, and ended up hiring him, which I still think was a mistake to this day. I don't really particularly want to get into it anymore, but like it didn't work. Bringing Ole in as interim didn't actually do anything. In fact, all we did was let Pogba and Martial off the hook to ruin the team and to laze around for 2 or 3 more years. You know, it didn't work in the long term. It did nothing for us. That's my opinion. I think it was a big mistake. We could have back then, we should have waited and gotten Pochettino, and that would have been right. That would have been the right call. We should have waited and got Pochettino. So, yeah, it's not a guarantee. He didn't work as an interim, though. What progress did we get? What did we get out of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer being interim? Nothing. We didn't get Champions League. We didn't really even finish very different to where we would have been. It really didn't change anything. to me. It didn't change anything. We didn't get top 4, and we shouldn't have hired him in the long run. It was a mistake. So it doesn't do much, right? But anyway, regardless of that, we got some happiness. We got the night in Paris. You're right. We got some good experiences. Okay, we went 6-6 though. At the end of the day, nothing happened. It was a spike as Pogba, Martial, some of these guys started trying for the first time in a while, and they did absolutely down tools on Jose Mourinho. That 100% did, and then. So they started performing all of a sudden, and that fell off because you can only ride the high for so long, and until everybody gets back to what they're doing, right? So it didn't work. So yeah, Lingard and Pogba dancing, right? Yeah, nobody forgets everything after Paris, how bad things got, right? So anyway, if we lose these games, and we keep seeing these poor performances, it obviously adds problems to what we are seeing now. I don't think we had the best post-Fergie seasons with Ole. I think one of them was pretty good, but I think Jose's second season was better, and I think he won the Europa in his first season, which is a big trophy while building things. I think Jose was a better manager. All things considered, despite everything. So anyway, regardless, it's going to add to that conversation. Now, so if it goes poorly, is there a chance that he loses the job during this international break? Yes, absolutely. There is a big chance of that, depending on if we lose the next few games and how it goes. And like I said, because it adds to the conversation, and it's going to make the discussion stronger in that direction of sooner rather than later. So, but it doesn't mean if he wins that he's staying. My point is, it's just adding context to the conversation. Nobody can sit there and say, if he wins, he stays. If he loses, he's gone, because the decision hasn't been made like that. That hasn't happened. There's discussion, but they are going to get together as they do and move ahead with the discussions to decide what course of action to take. So it's not if he wins to he's good, if he loses to he's gone. Nobody has said that. That's not true. That's not how it works. It's being overrated, but it just means, look, if they're judging him based on performances, 2 more games are 2 more games. That's all it means, right? It's just 2 more games within the context of everything. It's just 2 more games. We've only played, 8 games this year? So it's another 2 games to add to those 8 as context for how the season is going. That's all it means. It's 2 more games to add context to the conversation. That's how it's going. If he were to depart, here's the problem you have, right? Who's available, okay? Who is available? If he departs, and I'm not saying this means he wouldn't, but I'm saying if you didn't want Ruud as the interim to the end of the season, who is actually available as a manager? Who is actually available as a manager? To right now that is going to fix our season, but not just fix our season. Who's available as a manager that you want to get, that is also going to be your long-term person, because you don't want to get a stopgap. And a lot of the names and things that people are suggesting is not going to work. Again, I think you guys are misunderstanding it. I didn't say those 2 games are deciding anything. That's what's not true. That's where it's being painted not really correct. It's out of the context. The point is, it's within the it's just more games adding to the discussion that they're going to talk about. Who's available? And one of the things I think people are extremely naive about is thinking that good managers are going to leave their current jobs mid-season. It's very rare. It's very rare for that to happen. And sometimes it works and sometimes it really doesn't. I mean, Graham Potter left his job mid-season for Chelsea, failed, and he hasn't had a job since then. And I do think that's part of it, because everyone knows he's a loser now, frankly. He ditched out on Brighton. Now, Unai Emery did move mid-season very successfully in October, right? I think from Villarreal. Someone mentioned that. But that's one of the only examples I can think of. And I think he was already looking to come back through the summer. So Who's available that they want long term? Thomas Tuchel turned us down. Thomas Tuchel turned us down, right? Yeah, you're talking about people who are available. McKenna's not leaving. We had talks with McKenna in summer, and he signed a new contract. He's not leaving. He's not going to abandon Ipswich in their first season of promotion. Absolutely not happening. It's not happening. He's not doing that. That's not the type you underestimate the loyalty of some of these people. Nagelsmann is not interested right now. He's staying with Germany to the World Cup. He's had his contract extended. Gareth Southgate's available, right? So they don't want to do that. They don't want to hire Gareth Southgate. That's the point. Otherwise, there's no discussion. That's the thing I think some people are missing. If they wanted Gareth Southgate, they wouldn't have any question about sacking Ten Hag. Just realize that logic. Just think the logic through for a minute. If they wanted Gareth Southgate, they wouldn't have to think about sacking Ten Hag. They would just do it because their long-term manager that they wanted is available. So they should hire him now if they wanted Gareth Southgate, right? So it wouldn't even be in question. Amorim is not going to leave Sporting right now. So there's a lot of managers that are not under consideration anymore. Graham Potter, again, they don't really want him right now, right? They considered Graham Potter previously, but at the moment and in more recent times, he's not been considered for the job. They did think about him early on, and I wasn't joking when I mentioned that before, but towards the end of the year last year, Graham Potter was not really in the frame, and he continues to not be in the frame, okay? So it makes more sense to go interim and then hire somebody you really want at the end of the season. A lot of these managers are not going to leave mid-season, okay? A lot of them are not going to leave mid-season. And yeah, David Moyes is available, right. And the ones that are not really going to make a difference. Maybe they will try for Thomas Tuchel again, but I'm saying he turned us down. So the reality, like they obviously liked him, but the reality of that happening, I don't think is there, because why would he accept us now after turning us down earlier? That's the question. And I think that this is sort of the backup when it comes to Ruud van Nistelrooy. But no, that doesn't mean he's going to sabotage and he's not going to work hard and he's not going to try. Other names, other things that I understand as well. Like I said, I think Potter is no longer really of interest. Eddie Howe is not somebody that I think there's particularly anything in right now as well. Thomas Frank is somebody they have liked in the past, but as I understand it, not really someone they're looking at moving forward at the moment. At the moment, he's not, like, just as speaking from my understanding of some of the decision makers' thoughts at the moment and who they like, Thomas Frank not really somebody right at that moment. If I were to be asked right now, like, who would be 3 candidates that they would look to for potential long-term managers if they were interested, it would still be Kieran McKenna, Xabi Alonso, who they would have loved to got, but I don't know if that's realistic, and Ruben Amorim are 3 managers they still quite like. There will probably be more over the end of the season. If it goes to that, and if they're looking towards the end of the season, that they will assess how they perform through this year. People like Inzaghi, people like, Hoeneß, I think is how you pronounce it, hopefully. Those will be people that they will assess, that they'll look at. Ireola, somebody that they'll want to see how he performs through this season, and see how he does. But people like Amorim and McKenna and Xabi Alonso have been previously looked at and assessed by people at United. So they know a bit more about them. But again, none of those are happening mid-season. Some of those are going to be tough to convince end of season, but none of them are happening mid-season, and not all of those are definitely valid options. So the way I see it is that, in essence, they messed up this summer, because if they were going to, I think they were naive. Once they'd made the decision to change and gone through all of that, I think they had to do it. Yeah, Postecoglou, right? Yeah. I think once they talked about all that, they had to do it. if they had decided to keep him, they should have kept with it, and that would be it. But they should have, once they backed away from that, I think they made a huge misassessment, because now it's really tough in the midseason to do anything with the manager. It's just unrealistic to pull a manager from another team, especially when some of the best managers are in the Premier League, and some of the best managers who are looking to step up are also in the Premier League, right? Like we've said, Areola, McKenna, they're in the Premier League. They're not leaving their teams. So, you know, Amorim, you look at the work Amorim is doing this year, it's stunning work right now. Depressingly so, you know, he's a really good manager, and somebody that people really, that a lot of things and flying at the moment. And I think people think that it should come back now. People think that you know, we should be back now. Like Sporting are this club who deserve to be, or are usually winning the league, but they're not. You know, he's won them the league for the first time in, what was it, 20 years or something as a manager. So yeah. Anyway, they're very, very impressive. They're very, very impressive. I watched Amorim and Sporting extensively. I've spent way too much time watching Portuguese league, but Amorim won't be ready at minimum until end of the season. Xavi, I don't think, is somebody that you'll want to get. Yeah. So, you know, anyway, there's a lot that goes into this. It's you know, it's complicated. So like I said, I think that they did get it wrong. I've said that before. I've said that I think they got it wrong how they went about things in the summer, because if you were going to go down that road, you needed to take it all the way. But the fact that they've gone round and round and they backed around on it really left them in an ugly situation, because it's very, very hard to change things mid-season. So, we're going to wait and see. The next two games will just add more discussion to the conversation. They're not the make break of things. And there are two different points being made, which is, number one, is Ten Hag the right guy long term? And the measure of that is different potentially to, is he the guy we could see out the season with and continue to see how things go? Those are two different discussions, okay? Just bear that in mind. And I know that's complicated. I know that's annoying. I know that's frustrating. But that's the truth of it. There's two different discussions as to whether Ten Hag is the right guy long term and whether Ten Hag is someone who can see out the season or not. So those are different things. It's not, there's nothing in it. They're meaningful. It's fair to say INEOS have failed on the manager situation. Maybe. I don't think it's that simple, though. I mean, you're talking about owners who are coming in to own the club for the next 15, 20, 30 years. You know, this isn't the make break of their ownerships. This isn't the make break of how they manage things. This isn't the defining moment for INEOS. They're not a player who's going to be here for 2 years and then they're gone, right? The defining moment is what they do in the long run. They appointed the right people. If it results in an unfortunate, like, what were we going to win anyway, right, this year? Not that much. If anything, probably nothing. I think we did a lot of good things. I think that they messed up the manager situation because they either should have just said Ten Hag is staying next year, or they should have sacked him instantly by the end of the season. The review was stupid, and the way that they ended up in it was even worse. So I think they went about it all wrong. Yeah, so a lot of the names that are floating out there, Eddie Howe, Southgate, Potter, etc., are not really at the top of the list at the moment. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to figure this out. I think they messed it up a little bit, but I know people say, well, that's the season written off, but the fact is, what's the difference? Like, I'm not defending it because I'm miserable with it. I've shared my opinion many times. I think Ten Hag should have gone. And I think that the well is poisoned. And like I said, it was pointless for him to stay because it was doomed to fail. But what was the difference anyway? The difference is, I think, purely in our own perspective as fans, right? And I'm not discounting that. if we had a new manager, we might have played mediocre football this season, but in the view that we would be progressing with this manager towards the long term, right? And towards the goal of winning the league, and it's a first season, and it's a different view if you take that perspective, in our own view, in our own look at things. Well, that can still sort of be the case alongside the current manager, because the view of new ownership and the view of clubs moving forward is that your project exists well beyond the manager. It's bigger than the manager. It's a lot more than the manager. And that is where, we need to see them make a difference. And that is where we can still progress while having a mediocre to bad season. But the point is how bad, right? Because we still could be progressing, but not at the pace that we wanted under Ten Hag. But it's bad. It's so bad that it's becoming a subject of discussion. That it's so bad, right? Even Bruno Fernandes said, even Bruno Fernandes said, they're not expecting to win things this year. Nobody said trust INEOS because they're experts on football. Quite the opposite. I think everybody, including myself, originally said they're not football experts. They're experts in certain things. I'm not trusting INEOS. At this point in time, INEOS have very little to do with this. It's Dan Ashworth. My point is INEOS made the bad decision of how they went about it. In my opinion, they messed up. Because again, I'm not even saying it's about keeping or getting rid of Ten Hag, but the way it all went was bad. And led to an impossible situation. But you have them fixing the things now that they're supposed to be focused on, and it's really up to Dan Ashworth to sort this all out at this point in time and figure it out. And one of the things we don't know about Dan Ashworth, I don't think he's ever had to sack a manager before. You can look at it. He's managed a lot of smaller clubs, a lot of things like that, where managers have taken a step forward onto bigger clubs. He's been good at finding the right person, but I don't think he's ever sacked a manager. By the way. So, it's just something to think about. That some of this is new territory for everybody, right? And I'm not excusing it, but yeah, I'm not excusing it, but it is what it is, and we have to accept it. I like I said, I think they've improved a lot of things. I think the transfers were good. I think a lot of it was good, but there was a lot of things that were, that weren't done in time. And a lot of it comes back to the fact that it took so long for that deal to get done. If they'd gotten in last summer, we would see a different situation, but it took all the way until January to for them to get their feet in the ground, and then until February to get approved and all of that. So anyway, it will be discussed next week. The next two games will add color to the decision. The next two games will add color to the conversation. There's just more context to go. There's discussions will be had over what they do with all of it. Yeah, players are being misprofiled totally. Now, if anybody's still interested in sitting and hanging out to just go over a couple of interesting things, like I said, I went down a rabbit hole of there's this whole thing from 2013, Manchester United, Sir Alex Ferguson gives blueprint for success. And he gave a series of interviews to Harvard Business School with a Harvard Business School professor. And it's just, I thought it was really interesting, reading through some of these things and comparing them to the mistakes that we made with Ten Hag as well, right? Because I think it's gone so much worse than it should be. Than it should be, even with Ten Hag, even if what you think of him, you think Ashworth sacked Chris Hughton at Brighton? Someone mentioned that, but there was more context around that, in that he was already getting sacked, and Dan Ashworth came in to appoint his replacement in terms of the timing. So I don't know, but I believe there was context around that, right? But this is much more specific than just ownership. Real interesting. So here, I want to pull it up because I think this is interesting stuff, and it's really, it's kind of enlightening. He says, number one, start with the foundation. Let's start here because this is really interesting. From the moment I got to Manchester United, I thought of only one thing: building a football club. I wanted to build right from the bottom. The first thought of 99% of newly appointed managers is to make sure they win, to survive. They bring experienced players in. At some clubs, you need only to lose 3 games in a row and you're fired. In today's football world with a new breed of directors and owners, I'm not sure any club would have the patience to wait for a manager to build a team over a 4-year period. Winning a game is only a short-term game. You can lose the next game. Building a club brings stability and consistency. So what did we do? Well, we lost the first 2 games of the season under Ten Hag, and we brought in Antony for 95 million euros and Casemiro for 70 million euros. Right? That's what we did. So the opposite of Ten Hag, with Ten Hag of what Sir Alex said. We chased in the first season with Ten Hag, even though we did pretty well. The biggest mistake that we made is we turned to results, to just trying to win games. We changed. When Ten Hag came in, the style of play he was doing, you could see it, and it didn't work. We didn't have the players for it. But that doesn't mean it was the wrong approach. And one of the biggest problems I think we've had, and where things have gone wrong with Ten Hag, is that those first 2 games were incredibly damaging. Because we lost, and because the panic set in, then we went on to try to win the rest of the games, and we changed how we played football, right? And you know, we changed how we wanted to play, and we went pragmatic entirely to win football games. And it worked. We won a lot of games. But we never really put in place the style of play and built from the ground up the way that Sir Alex mentions here, right? And it's not just him. We've done this many times in the past. We get so focused on results, and this is a big part on the ownership as well. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know, Irish. It's true. We totally don't know. It may have worked, it may not have, but the guarantee that it wouldn't work long term is there. We never built the club with Ten Hag when he was in there. We went for short-term wins. So we don't know. Maybe it would never have worked. But that's the bad blood that's under it. We're still paying for the cost of Antony, still paying for the cost of Casemiro, still paying for those things, right? God Emperor Nagelsmann is the one for us. He's the one. I don't know. I don't think he will. I don't think there's anything in it. But that's a problem. You know, here, this one, a little less relevant because of the time of it. We identified 3 levels of players, you know, the ages, you know, the young players learn from the older players. Don't be afraid to get rid of those senior players and all of that, right? Makes sense. I think we've done all right there. Set high standards and hold everyone to them. Now, I think this is really important. One of the differences between Ten Hag and Sir Alex in terms of the position within the club is that when Sir Alex was here, he was God, okay? Just to put it in different words, right? Sir Alex was God. He was the club, okay? He was the club. He was everything. So it was his standards were the club's standards. His views were the club's views. His approach was the club's approach, right? He'd been there for such a long time by the end. That's how it was. When he left, all of that left with him. It's not just the manager who sets the standards, right? They have to be backed up by the club standards. And this is what Phil was talking about the other day, okay? You have to have the ability for other people, you know, you have to have at a club level standards so that everything doesn't now fall to the coach, to the manager. Because Pochettino's not in the MLS, he's managing a national team. But you have to have the ability to have backup. You need backup. You need people to help you out. You need people to sort you out. You need people to back you up with those standards so it doesn't all fall to you. And I think that in that essence, we failed Ten Hag. Now, Ten Hag is too much stick and not enough carrot as well. In terms of man management, which Sir Alex was fantastic at, which I'll cover later. Talks about never ever ceding control, don't let the players. We've all read this. People like to talk about this one, right? About, not letting the players run the show and all of that. We know that that's been an issue at United, and we know that that's important, but I think a lot of people missed a lot of these other things. Well, yeah, and Fergie left all those things because there was also, you could see that there was no sport structure behind him too. It was just him. And that doesn't work either. And as time went on and as the game has changed, it's gotten worse and worse. But he acknowledges a lot of that. Match the message to the moment. Nobody likes to be criticized. Most respond to encouragement. Now, this is all man management stuff. And this is where he was the best. Most respond to encouragement. It's always criticize. We see it in the public. Ten Hag criticizes constantly in public. It's always, they did this wrong. They messed this up. They did this. They messed that up. It may be true. It's still not the way that you want to do things because there's not enough of the encouragement, of the passion, of the things behind the scenes. This is a weak area for Ten Hag, is the management of people. You can still be hard. See, that's the thing about this. Setting high standards, but also nobody likes to be criticized. How do you do that? Well, that's what the best managers figure out how to do, right? Is point out mistakes while also being able to encourage, all of these things, and so you have reprimands. And he also says you do it right away. You don't wait till later. You do it immediately, which I think is quite interesting because people hate when, days later you're waiting for, the thunder to come down on you. It's got to happen right away, right? And these are some interesting points, and there's some really good videos on this too. And this is a little bit what Phil was talking about that I agree with. My pregame talks were about our expectations, the players' belief in themselves and their trust in one another. Okay. In halftime talks, you have maybe 8 minutes to deliver your message, so it's vital. You have to improve it. Fear has to come into it, but you can't be too hard. If players are fearful all the time, they won't perform well. You play different roles at different times. Sometimes you have to be a doctor or a teacher or a father, right? So you have to be someone different to everyone based on the situation, based on the person, based on what's happening. That flexibility is really hard for a lot of people, okay? And that is something that, again, I would say that's where things are not meeting the expectations. And then here's one I want to bring up, okay? Winning is my nature. There's no other option for me. Listen to this. I hadn't actually read this quote before. Even if 5 of the most important players were injured, I expect to win. And you can contrast that to, we know the reasons why it's not working. No team can deal with so many injuries and issues as we've had. We still should have done better with depth in the squad. When you have so many injuries, the depth is not enough. Unacceptable quotes to me. Not even because they aren't true, but because of attitude. Because of the attitude. The attitude, you cannot ever have the attitude that you're not supposed to win, or that it's okay not to win, or that it's acceptable not to win, because that lingers down to the players too. You can't say your players aren't good enough and that's why we don't win, because that goes down to the players. Yeah, I'll link this for you. Here, I'll link this for you. It's a Guardian article from ages ago. You cannot do that. You can't do that, right? Because that attitude, your attitude meets the player's attitude. And that's what people don't realize is the danger, in my opinion, of making the excuses, is that you're letting players off the hook too. And you're telling them that, it's okay, or that they're not good enough, or that they shouldn't win. You can never say it. Just literally never. You can never be on the defensive and say we shouldn't be winning. You can say we were shit. That's it. You can say we were shit, but you can never say that we cannot be winning, or that we have a reason to not win. Because you want those 11 players playing to always think they should be winning the game, right? I went over the power of observation thing earlier, right? And talking about that. I went over that. I mean, look, the team that Sir Alex last won the league with is not good enough to win the league. It was a bunch of aging players at the end of their careers, but it was never the attitude that you couldn't win. And that was magic. That was magic on its own, right? It was. It was magic on its own. It has its own magic, and you underestimate it. I mean, you think Leicester would have won the league without extreme belief in that season. I mean, it matters. It matters. Okay. And this comes from the top too. The owners, the people, when their attitude is that you don't have to win and all of that, is different. But like I said, Sir Alex was God. So when he was there, the God of the football club, when he was there, that was the attitude of the football club. Never stop adapting. And this is I think he he says players are more sheltered lives. They're more fragile than they were 25 years ago. And I think that that's where some of the things that he says, that he gets is that, people, they're not the same. You cannot treat everybody like Roy Keane. They're just not like that. You cannot treat everybody like, Job Stam, like they're going to play that way. And you just can't. And that they're going to be like that, right? So, these are, to me, the things that make the difference from an individual perspective when you approach things. And a lot of it comes from the fact that, a lot of it comes from the fact that it's hard for one person to do all of that now. You have to have that. All of those things have to be everywhere in the club to back up the manager and support it. And then the manager has to follow through with that incredibly well. But you do see that the best managers in all of football, the people who get the most results, the people who see the best success, are really good at dealing with people. They know how to deal with people. They deal with people extremely well, and they manage people really well. A lot of people say Ten Hag is really good tactically, and I think he might be. But the problem is once you fall out with people, getting your ideas across, communicating to them, managing them makes it impossible, right? Pep is a complete man manager. I'm not saying he's not a genius tactically. He is, but I mean, Pep's communication skills are impeccable. Look at how he conducts himself. Obviously, he's on an insane team and all the things that go with that. That's why, I will never put him above Sir Alex when you consider everything. But his communication is impeccable. It's perfect. He knows exactly what he's doing. That doesn't mean he hasn't kicked people out. That doesn't mean he hasn't done that. Sir Alex did too. People you wouldn't expect. That doesn't mean there aren't potentially other issues, but he is impeccable. He knows what he's doing. But like I said before, you take all those points and it can explain the problem with Ten Hag, where you could get lost in the forest, where you stop observing and you start thinking too much, and then you start getting problems. And so you don't know how to apply all that knowledge to the people around you. But, it starts with a lot of people. And yeah, I saw the thing from Benny McCarthy about not having the people posted that, not having the fire, not having the passion. Those things matter. Those things matter. So, it is what it is. It's just an honest discussion of things. So if you were to ask me now, just to kind of wrap this up where things are at, I don't see why we would do much better over the next couple of games. I suspect it'll go pretty poorly. And then, I suspect it'll go fairly poorly. I think I've been leaning towards the likelihood that Ten Hag will go and that Ruud van Nistelrooy will be the interim until the end of the season. But I could also see it taking longer. I could also see it taking longer than that for anything to happen. But because it hasn't been made, the decision hasn't been made yet. They haven't actually come together and said these two games, if we win, if we lose, it's this or that. So you can't go in and say that that has happened. So we will see. We will see. Yeah. So I've been talking for an hour and a half. I'm probably going to end it here. I can answer any further questions that I might want to. I hope it was interesting. I hope it was enlightening. I think there's a lot of scary stuff out there about Southgate and things like that. But I think there's I think there's better ways to. I think there's different ways to do it. 1 second. I don't think that that's who they want. I don't think that that's who they're going to go for, because if they wanted him, then there wouldn't be any questions, right? They could already make the call on something like that. I don't think they'll tell him in advance the second. I think it'll just be failure and then bam. Could be. Yeah, enjoy. Yeah, let's watch the. Yeah, I'm not gonna watch it on stream because God, that was a bore last time. But But yeah, the Champions League coming up. Some good games this afternoon. So enjoy. I hope you have a good one. Definitely, I think that's what I'll do this afternoon while I get to work now, is watch those as well. What else? Okay, win next two, still sack. I don't know. Depends. Like I said, Southgate, no. You can watch my whole video. Michael Carrick. I think Michael Carrick is one to watch. I think Michael Carrick is just one to watch. I don't know of anything in particular, but I'm sure he's on the radar. Yeah, look, we've sacked managers for less, but like I said, I would consider in general it'd be a different period of time with new owners. You know, nothing's really that comparable to the last, for the last 10 years to now. It's not really comparable. We do have new owners. We have made all sorts of different changes, and like I said, I've expressed enough I'm not even saying I agree with this approach, but it is what it is at this point. You think he'll be here until after Liverpool? I think if he makes it to January, he's staying for the rest of the season. Like, guaranteed. Because I think that they wanted to make that decision in December. Dallo, observation. If I go to here, sorry, look, the last line here says, sometimes I could even tell that a player was injured when I thought he was fine. And I see with Dallo somebody who usually works really hard. And I've seen it with some others where they would never want to admit they're injured, but they might be carrying something, you know what I mean? And when they don't put the effort in, when they don't run fully, when they don't do something all the way, I start to think, are they not feeling 100%? And they can't even tell, but just there's like more struggle, and I think that that's interesting, and I think that there's potential for that, especially for a player like him, where you don't usually see that kind of stuff. So that's what I've got. I'm gonna end it here, get to work, and watch the Champions League as well. I'm not saying good enough, but yeah, it's weird, right? It's weird. It's just a weird thing that's happened, and I tend to give people sometimes the benefit of the doubt. So thank you all for hanging out with me. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the Champions League. See you all later. I will have, like I said, a podcast tomorrow, as well as a video with Darnish, and then we will do more Thursday and Friday. I've got a couple other ideas planned as well, and then we'll see what we do. Okay? Have a good one. Bye, everybody.